Shirley Yu is Senior Visiting Fellow at the Institute of Global Affairs at the London School of Economics and joins us. Shirley, great to have you on the programme.
Thank you.
Let's talk about that growth. In the days when we used to see double-digit growth and now we're only seeing around the 6%, there's no surprise, right? Double-digit growth was never going to be sustainable.
Of course not. China has had an exceptional economic growth record, as you have shown earlier, including lifting 850 million people out of poverty. It's an extraordinary phenomenon, I think, in modern world history. But I think with the slowdown of the economic growth, China is actually simply normalizing itself as a normal emerging market economy. And I think the world shouldn't be taken by much surprise that sooner or later, China's economic trajectory is just going to revert back to the mean.
Right, OK, so no surprises. We should all take this sort of growth numbers as the norm. Going forward, though, many will ask, where is China's future growth going to come from? Because isn't there a case where and Beijing knows this and they're trying to do it, it's got to be quality over quantity?
Oh, yes, absolutely. Yes, I think there is going to be enormous amount of structural transformation that's going to happen to the Chinese economy. China is going to transform from an input-driven economic growth model to essentially a productivity-driven economic growth model. Paul Krugman said something 20 years ago that Chinese economic story is largely a function of massive inputs without the productivity efficiency. So Chinese economy no longer has a labor premium today. I think 2017 China hit a tipping point when there were more people leaving the labor force than people joining. Right. And the Chinese government knows that investment-led economic growth model is just simply long-term unsustainable, and so it's trying very hard to deleverage the economy. And so now productivity is the only game in town, so China needs to increase its productivity growth. But also, correctly, like what you said, China needs to focus more on the quality of the economic growth. China can no longer afford to grow at the cost of the environment. And also China needs to deepen its capital market reform so that corporates could resort to a capital market for direct financing.
So I'm sorry, just for the initiator, so companies in China can basically borrow like companies in the West borrow?
Borrow or just have, to go to the stock market to seek financing. And so China, it's an incredible story. China's consumption has contributed to 70% of China's GDP growth in 2018, and the 400 million middle-income class is on the horizon. And in 10 years, that's expected to double to 800 million.
A middle class of 800 million. So the consumption power of that, just very briefly, is hard to get our head around.
Gigantic.
Yeah. Okay.
Gigantic. But there's a lot of work to do because the household savings rate is still fairly high in China. And I think Chinese government needs to adjust its social welfare systems and its healthcare systems so that if you imagine 800 million middle class on the horizon can afford to save less and spend more.
And that's the whole idea. Save less, spend more. And on that note, we're going to leave it there. Shirley, a pleasure. Thank you so much for taking us through that. Shirley Yu joining me then. Okay, let me just